Imagine waking up 30,000 years ago, deep inside a cave, with no bathroom, no toilet paper, and not even a door to close behind you. So when nature called, what did you actually do? The answer is stranger, smarter, and sometimes far stinkier than you would expect. And it says a lot about how far we have come. For most of human history, going to the toilet simply meant walking away from camp. Early humans lived in small nomadic groups, so they did not need plumbing. They just needed distance. Wander a little way from the fire, find a bush, and that was it. Nature handled the rest. Rain washed it away, insects broke it down, and the group moved on to a new hunting ground before it ever became a problem. But here's the twist. Even without toilets, ancient humans still needed something to clean up with. Leaves were the obvious choice, but not just any leaves. Some plants were avoided because they caused rashes, while others were picked specifically for being soft or slightly fuzzy. Moss was another favorite, especially in colder climates, because it was soft, absorbent, and easy to find. In snowy regions, people even used actual snow. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Once humans started living in permanent settlements around 10,000 years ago, the walk away and forget it method stopped working. Too many people in one place meant waste piled up fast, and that brought disease. So ancient civilizations had to invent something the world had never truly needed before: the toilet. One of the earliest examples comes from the Indus Valley civilization in what is now Pakistan and northwest India around 4,500 years ago. Cities like mohenjo had private toilets inside individual homes, connected to covered drains running beneath the streets. This was one of the first known sewage systems on Earth, built thousands of years before ancient Rome ever perfected the idea. And speaking of Rome, their public toilets might be the most surprising part of this whole story. Roman citizens did not sit alone in a private stall. Instead, they sat side by side on long stone benches with rows of keyhole-shaped holes, chatting with strangers while a stream of running water flowed beneath them. It sounds shocking today, but privacy simply was not part of the plan. Here is the part that tends to make people gasp. Instead of toilet paper, Romans used a small sponge attached to a stick called a tersorium. After use, they rinsed it in a bucket of vinegar or salty water and then left it there for the next person to use. Yes, the very same sponge, shared by dozens of strangers. Some historians even believe this is the real origin of the phrase getting the wrong end of the stick. Meanwhile, over in ancient Greece, people used broken pieces of pottery called passoi to scrape clean. Archaeologists have actually found some of these pottery fragments with insults scratched onto them, aimed at unpopular political figures of the time. In other words, ancient Greeks were literally wiping away their enemies. Ancient Egypt took a slightly more luxurious approach, at least if you happened to be wealthy. Some Egyptian homes had wooden or limestone toilet seats positioned over a bowl filled with sand, which servants would empty and clean afterward. For everyday cleaning, Egyptians often used water, and the wealthy sometimes used soft papyrus instead. Over in ancient China, one especially clever invention combined two problems into a single solution: the pig toilet. Farmers built outhouses directly above pig pens, so human waste dropped straight down to feed the pigs, and their manure fertilized the crops. Nothing went to waste. Archaeologists have even found painted pottery models of these combined pig and toilet structures, buried inside tombs to accompany the dead into the afterlife. China is also credited with pioneering one of the biggest hygiene upgrades in history. As paper became more available, people began using it for personal hygiene by around the 6th century, long before it became common anywhere else in the world. By the time of later medieval Chinese dynasties, paper made specifically for this purpose was even manufactured for the royal court in enormous quantities. Now, let us jump to medieval Europe, where things somehow got even messier. Castles often had a small stone alcove called a garderobe, essentially a toilet seat built into the wall with a long shaft dropping straight down into the moat, a pit, or even the river below. If you have ever wondered why nobody wanted to swim in a castle moat, now you know. Waste was collected by workers with an unglamorous job title, gong farmers, who cleared it from cesspits, usually at night for obvious reasons. In the Americas, indigenous communities relied on whatever the environment provided. Some nations used dried corn cobs, a method that later spread to early colonists and settlers, while others used soft leaves, moss, or smooth stones. Far to the north, Norse Vikings built simple wooden outhouses near their longhouses, often shared by the whole household, with moss once again serving as their version of toilet paper. Meanwhile, across the Islamic world, cleanliness carried deep religious importance. Water was considered the preferred method of cleaning after using the toilet, a practice still followed by millions of people today, and detailed hygiene guidelines were written down centuries before modern germ theory ever existed. So across completely different continents, with no communication between them, ancient humans kept arriving at the very same basic challenge and solving it in wildly different, sometimes ingenious, sometimes stomach-churning ways. Strangely enough, all of this ancient waste turned out to be a goldmine for modern science. Archaeologists study fossilized human waste, known as coprolites, to figure out exactly what ancient people ate, what parasites they carried, and even how healthy their gut bacteria were thousands of years ago. In a very real sense, some of our best clues about daily ancient life were quite literally left behind in the toilet. There is even a friendly ongoing debate among historians about just how clean these ancient systems really were. Some evidence suggests Roman sewers occasionally backed up, and that shared sponges may have spread more illness than they prevented, despite everyone's best intention. Ancient hygiene was clearly a work in progress, built through trial, error, and a whole lot of persistence. Which brings us back to you. The next time you sit down on a clean porcelain toilet, flush with a single button, and reach for a soft roll of toilet paper, remember that you are standing on the end of an 8,000-year experiment. Someone, somewhere, figured out drainage systems, shared sponges, pig-powered plumbing, and paper manufacturing, all so that one day, going to the bathroom could be quick, private, and almost completely forgettable. And honestly, that might be one of the most underrated achievements in all of human history.